Let me have, while they're working on that, let me have Ms. Murr and Mr. Garrett approach briefly. Ms. Murr?
I can see the deputy outside.
Tell her I said happy birthday. Next couple of days, 4 years a week.
I'm 2 blocks away from the letters. If it comes in, you see me run out, you know what? It's okay. Good to see you.
Judge.
Yes.
Moore's going down there to let them know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Moore from Court Services is going down to let them in the media room know that not to stream anything, any audio unless we're in session.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Did we resolve the,
Yep. We'll just try, can I just test this second one, just so it's,
Yeah.
take 2 seconds.
Thursday, August 20.
Got one more in the rest.
not a problem, they're gonna test,
Thanks, Bob.
All good?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Judge, I'm going to line them up when you're ready.
I think so. How close are we?
We're ready, Judge.
Oh,
We're ready.
okay. Defense ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, we'll bring in the jury momentarily. I have the state witnesses.
Here's the new one in order, you got the new one.
Both of mine are the same. You say there's something different than what I?
They gave you a newer one today, and it was kind of more in order. That's probably whatever was on top.
Which is the one I had yesterday, because I had already. I don't have a new one. Oh.
Oh, there you are.
We go.
Ready, Judge?
Yes, we are.
All rise, jury entering.
All members of the jury are present and seated. Everyone else may be seated this time. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, good morning. Welcome back. Thank you for coming back in this weather out there. It's completely understandable. Getting here was not easy this morning, so thank you again for your patience with us, with the weather, and being here this morning. My first question to you before we get started, in just a moment we're going to pick up where we left off, and I'm going to ask the state to call their next witness, is did any of you have any contact with anyone outside of the courtroom about this case? And by that I mean, did you read anything, see anything, hear anything, or discuss with anybody anything about this case? If so, please raise your hand. All right, let the record reflect that none of the jurors have had any contact with the case outside of the courtroom. Is the state ready to proceed?
We are, Your Honor.
I'll ask you to call your next witness.
Just to approach, I'm sorry.
Yes.
We do.
All right, Mr. Terry, you'll call your next witness, please.
State will call Wesley Rowe.
Wesley Rowe. Mr. Rowe, good morning and welcome, sir.
Good morning.
If you'll come forward to be sworn wherever you're comfortable, if you'll face me and raise your right hand, perfect, thank you. Do you swear affirm any testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you. If you'll follow the bailiff around to the ramp that leads up to the witness chair, please watch your step. When you get to the chair, go ahead and have a seat, make yourself comfortable. That microphone is adjustable.
Okay.
Terry, you may proceed.
Good morning, Mr. Rowe. If you could please state your name for the jury and then spell your name for the court reporter.
It's Wesley Rowe, W-E-S-L-E-Y-R-O-E.
And, Mr. Rowe, where do you live?
I live at 14108 Fensbury Drive, Tampa, Florida, 33624.
And how long have you lived there?
About 12 years now.
And who lives with you at that address?
My wife, Elena Rowe, and my stepdaughter, Elizabeth Ray.
Do you know the defendant, Nicole Nachtman?
Yes.
And how do you know her?
She was a daughter of our neighbor next door.
And how about her mother, Miriam Deans? Did you know her?
Yes.
And just say.
She was our neighbor.
Okay, and Robert Deans as well?
Yes.
And you knew all three of them?
Yes.
When did you first meet them?
Obviously when they moved in. I don't remember the exact year.
Okay. And were you friends with them or neighborly with them, or how would you describe the relationship?
Just neighborly.
Okay. Would you say hi to them when they were walking out?
Yes.
All right. Did you all share, like if one was going out of town, did you all do things for each other?
Yeah, they picked up our mail at times when we were out of town.
Okay. And would you do the same for them if they needed it?
I think we did it maybe once, I can't totally remember.
All right. And who did you see mostly from the
Bob.
house? Bob?
Yeah.
And why is that?
He'd usually be outside working on his house, doing yard work or, doing something on the side of his house. So I would see him at times.
Okay, I'm showing you a photo that has already been introduced into evidence of State's Exhibit 1, lived in?
Yes.
Or are living in currently
Yes.
still? Yes, okay. How close are your houses?
I would say 20 or maybe a little bit more feet on the closest side,
Any privacy fences, anything in between?
not between their house.
I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna show you what's marked as States Exhibits 3A through D and ask you if you can just take a look at them and see if you recognize what those are.
Yeah, that's our house and theirs.
Okay, and what is it, are there pictures of your houses
Yeah,
from, like, directly in front or from above?
above.
And do they fairly and accurately depict your houses as they look from the sky?
Yes.
Judge, move to have States Exhibits number 3, A through D admitted into evidence.
Any objection? They'll be admitted.
Publish them.
You may publish.
States Exhibit 3A, can you identify what we're looking at here?
Our house is on the left, their house is on the right.
Okay, so when you say your house is on the left, that would be that one?
Yes.
Left looking at the screen?
Yep.
Okay. And that's the overhead of Ms. Nachtman's house?
Yes.
All right. And States 3B, we're basically looking at the same thing from a different angle?
Yeah, the first house, or the one on the right there, is theirs, and then there's our house there.
So this is
Yep.
Ms. Nachtman's, and this one up here
Yes, is ours.
is yours? Okay. And that yard between, there's nothing, no barriers, no?
No.
So you all could look directly to the side of their house, and they could look directly to the side
Yes.
of their house? And do y'all, the backyard, it looks like just almost like a shared backyard sort of, or what is, how's that set up?
Well, it's actually most of our property. There are lots like a pie shape, so
Okay.
most of the property is ours, and then it backs up to like a pond or a little lake.
States 3C, this would be another angle of those houses as well, correct?
Yes,
Right, and then states 3D is from a little higher up and a little more distant, that's the lake you're referring to?
yeah,
All right, and the access around the lake, it looks like there's no fencing or anything, so you can go anywhere you want around that lake?
you can. There's like an open field on the left there.
All right. And so people's houses, the area around the lake, is that like an easement kind of
It's an
thing, or-
easement, yeah.
Okay. Now, going to the summer of 2015, did you see Ms. Nachtman around the house during that summer?
I would see her periodically. It looked like she was home from like college for the summer.
Now, with Ms. Nachtman, what was your interaction like with her?
Didn't really interact much with her, just would see her. I mean, I just kind of see her come and go.
Okay. And do you see her in the courtroom here today? Do you
Yes, I do.
recognize her?
Yeah,
Could you identify her for the record, please?
this lady right there.
And what is she wearing?
She's got like a gray cardigan. She's got glasses.
May the record reflect he's identified the defendant.
The record shall so reflect.
Now, in the summer of 2015, were you working that summer?
Yes.
Where do you work? I didn't even ask you that.
I work for Hillsborough County Development Services. I'm a project manager, and I was at that time as well.
And what are your normal working hours?
Probably between 8 and 5.
How about your wife, Elena? Does she work as well?
Yes, she does.
And what were her hours?
It was probably more like 9:30 to like 6:30 or 10 to 7.
So
At
she
that
got in
time.
a little bit
Yeah,
later, but
she comes later, yeah.
Okay. And while you all worked, where was Elizabeth?
I think at that time she was mostly home for the summer, staying home.
Now specifically on August 20th of 2015, you were living in that house at that time, right?
Yes.
And you were working at the same place you
Yes.
just described. And were you working on that day?
Yes.
Do you recall approximately what time you got home that day?
It could have been, 5:45 or a little bit before 6, somewhere in that range, depending on traffic.
And was anyone there when you got home?
I think I remember my daughter being home there, yeah.
Okay. Did she at some point leave or go to an orientation?
If I remember, yeah, she had gone to some kind of school orientation to go to high school, for Sickles High School, yeah.
All right. And she went with her father, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
You're her stepfather?
That's correct.
All right. Now, at some point, while you two were home, did there come a time where you two were together discussing Sickles High School and what y'all were gonna do?
Yeah, it was sometime probably like around 9 o'clock or so, a little bit after that.
Is it already dark outside?
Yeah, it was already dark outside, 9:15 or something like that. We started talking about her going to high school and what was going on, how was, seeing the high school, how was it?
And what room were you all in?
I was in her bedroom.
Okay. And her bedroom, when we look at these houses, going back to 3B, looking at this picture, where in your house would her bedroom be?
Like you almost can see a window there. It's like the farthest to the right.
Okay. Are you referring to the only windows you can see
Yeah.
that are right there?
Yeah, but one more over.
This one here?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's her bedroom?
Yes.
And you all were in there that night?
Yes.
All right. What happened while you were in that room?
I mean, we were speaking, and I'm guessing around 9:20 or maybe a little bit before then, we heard a pop, and then I heard a pop, pop. It almost sounded like fireworks. And I was kind of thinking maybe, there were some kind of kids outside, doing fireworks or goofing off or something. So I didn't know exactly what it was. I basically walked out to our living room to see what was going on, and I kind of heard like a scream. It wasn't a kid's scream, it was kind of scream of, agony or disbelief. And next thing I saw was a shadowy figure run between the two windows in our living room towards back to that lake.
Okay. All right, now I'm gonna get into that with a little more detail with you. So, the shots you said, you just described it as bang, and then you said there was a pause?
There was a pause, and then there was two more.
And were those more rapid in
Yes,
succession?
they were right after each other.
Were you and Elizabeth startled when you heard that noise?
I was startled at first. I didn't know, obviously, if it was kids doing fireworks or something like that, or what was exactly going on. When I went out to the living room and saw the shadowy figure run, that's kind of, I think I really got startled and thought something might be up.
Now, this shadowy figure you described, could you tell whether the figure was male, female?
No,
Anything distinguishing at all about the figure?
just running back towards the lake.
So in that picture that we had earlier, it would be running from the driveway between the two houses towards the lake?
Yes.
Okay. I'll show you another couple of pictures, State's Exhibit 4A and B. Do you recognize those?
Yes.
And what are those pictures of?
That's a picture of one of our windows in our living room.
Is this in fact does this picture fairly and accurately
Yes,
depict that
it's
window in your living room?
totally accurate.
Judge, we've got State's Exhibit 4A and B admitted into evidence.
No objection.
To be admitted.
And was this the window you saw the figure as you described run by?
That window, and then to the next window, there was a second window.
Okay. So this window here, so I'm gonna put this on, State's Exhibit 4A. So that's the window we're talking about. And you can see through that window, there's some kind of lighting, or like a yellowish light. What are we looking at there?
Probably a street light that's out on the street.
Okay. And is that, what does this window look out? What's the viewpoint from it?
It's to their house there.
To the house of Nicole Nachtman?
Yeah.
All right, 4B, just a little more, what's the vantage point? So that's
the same window.
okay, and so what we're looking at, what we're seeing across from outside that window is their house?
That's correct.
Okay. And that's the window you believe you saw a shadow run by after the shots. And was this after the scream as well?
After the scream.
Okay. State's Exhibit 1K, would that be the area between these two houses?
That's correct.
And the window that you saw the figure run by, can you see that in this picture?
It's both of those windows on the right.
Okay,
The first window, the farthest window is the one you had the photo of.
that one?
Yeah,
And then this one?
yeah.
What room is that?
That's our living room.
Okay. And so after you heard the shots in the scream, you walk out into the living room, and that's when you saw the figure run by?
Yes.
And to be clear, it was running in this direction,
That's
not
correct.
that direction?
Yeah.
Right. Could you tell where these bangs in the scream were coming from?
It seemed like front of our house or somehow in the road in the front.
Okay. And you described these shots as coming around, you said 9:15?
Well, it could have been 9:15, could have been closer to 9:20. I'm not totally accurate at this point.
So after hearing these shots, the scream,
Yep.
you seeing the figure, what did you do at that point?
I was kind of second guessing myself, thinking, should I call 911, should I not? And I decided to start calling 911. I was just gonna call them, and even if it was something not, they would just, come out and figure out what had happened. So I got my cell phone and dialed 911.
Okay, I'm showing you, it's marked as State's Exhibit number 53 for identification. And I'm asking you to take a look at that. Do you see any markings on that?
Yeah, it has my initials and date.
Okay. Did you in fact listen to that audio?
Yes, I did.
And is that the exact CD you listened to?
Yep.
And does that audio fairly and accurately depict the 911 call you made that day?
Totally.
Okay. Judge, move to have State's Exhibit number 53 admitted into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection.
Are we admitted?
Move to publish, Your
You
Honor.
may publish.
Thursday, August 20, 2015, 21:25 and 43 seconds.
911, what is your emergency? No response, no abandoned line, need to call back.
Hello?
Hi sir, this is 911, we received a call from this number. Do you have an emergency?
Yes, we found like gunshots outside of our house and I saw somebody screaming and running.
Okay, what is the address of your emergency?
It's 14108 Spence Ferry Drive,
Okay,
Tampa, Florida.
is there a lot or an apartment number?
No, this is a house.
And you heard gunshots and screaming?
It sounded like gunshots.
How many gunshots did you hear?
At least 2 or 3.
Did you hear anything else after that, after the shot?
I heard somebody screaming, it looked like somebody running.
you know if it was a male or a female that was running?
No, I couldn't see, it's dark outside.
Okay, do you know if anyone was actually hit?
I don't know, I didn't go outside.
Okay, you have a comment, okay. What's your last name, sir?
Well, R.O.E.
R-O-E, and your first name?
Wesley?
Is it L-E-Y?
Yes.
And is the 3403049 the best number to reach you
Yes.
at?
Yes.
And how long ago did this happen?
About just 3 or 4 minutes ago.
Okay. And did you hear anything else, like people arguing, cars driving away fast?
No. No.
And you don't have a clothing description on the person you ran away?
No, I just saw somebody running outside.
Okay. Are you willing to meet with the deputy?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, I'll let him know you're willing to meet, okay? If you think of anything else, just give us a call back on 911, just don't hang up, okay? It always goes through even when you hang up.
Okay, because it kept ringing and ringing and ringing
Right,
and
that's
ringing.
very busy. But it probably will answer.
Okay. Okay, because I tried it from our home phone too, so you might have
Okay,
to call from our home phone.
I'll look that up. What's your home phone number? Because it looks like there are two for that area.
I don't know if we don't use it very often. I can find out for you. Hold on a second, I'm getting my bill.
Okay. That's okay, we found it.
Okay, okay,
Okay? All right, thank you, sir. We already have multiple units on the way to you, okay?
okay,
All
okay,
right,
thank you.
thank you. Do you know which direction the person was running before we hang up?
They look like they're running on the side of my yard. There's like a lake behind us.
So they're running towards the lane behind your house?
Yes.
Do you know if that's north, south, east, or west?
That would be considered west.
Okay, all right, I got it. We'll get, well, like I said, we're on the way.
Okay, thank
All
you.
right, thank you so much.
So, Mr. Rowe, I take it from that when you initially called 911, you eventually hung up?
Yes, because it kept ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing, and I was kind of panicking at that point, thinking, you know, you dial 911, somebody's supposed to pick up.
Right.
And thought something at some point was wrong with my cell phone, so I went to my home phone and tried dialing 911, and the same thing, exact same thing happened there as well. And at that point, when it was ringing on the home phone, they had called me back on my cell phone.
Okay, so that's what we hear at the beginning of that 911 call. That's kind of confusing. Okay. So, after that 911 call, did you call them back again?
Yes, I did.
And why was that?
After I hung up from the 911 call, I went out to front of our house inside, and we have some windows there. And I was looking outside the windows to see when the deputies or the sheriffs would arrive. So as I was looking out there, I saw something in my driveway, at the bottom of my driveway, and I couldn't figure out what it was at first. Couldn't picture what I was seeing because it was dark and there was some street lighting. And then I finally figured out what I was looking at were shoes, and I couldn't understand what are these shoes here. And then I understood that there was also blue jeans, and I figured out that was a body, and it was facing towards the road. So at that point, I was really panicking, so I went and called 911 again from my cell phone.
Okay. And I'm going to show you what's marked as State's Exhibit number 1C. Can you see that? Does it show
Well,
up?
it's not on here yet.
All right.
That's correct.
And this picture 1C, previously been introduced as evidence, that's your driveway, correct?
That's correct.
And was that the body you saw down there when you decided to call 911 again?
All I saw were like blue jeans and shoes, so I couldn't really see
So you
anything
didn't
else.
see this portion, you
No.
just kind of saw the back portion?
Yeah, and if you look to the left there, that's the window I would be looking out of.
Over here?
Yes.
Okay. But you could tell, you could at least tell though that it was a body.
Yes.
Right. Showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 54 for identification. Ask you if you recognize that.
Mm-hmm.
How do you recognize that?
That has my initials in it.
All right, did you actually listen to what's on that report?
Yes, I did.
And does that fairly and accurately depict the second 911 call?
Yes, it does.
All right, Judge moved to have State's Exhibit number 54 admitted into evidence.
No objection. It'll be admitted.
Maybe published, Your Honor?
Published.
Thursday, August 20, 2015, 21:33 and 34 seconds.
911, what is your emergency?
Yes, I called earlier about gunshots at my house, and it looks like, I'm looking out the front yard, it looks like somebody, at the end of our driveway got shot or something. They're like laying on the ground.
What is the address of the emergency?
14108 Fensbury Drive,
Can you spell the street name?
Fensbury, FENNSBURY Drive. And can we get a deputy here now?
Yes, sir, I'm trying to enter this into the system. How long ago were the gunshots?
I don't know, I called earlier, it was about 4 minutes before I called earlier. I think a deputy's here now.
They are there, can you see them?
I think so. I don't want to go outside after I heard that. And it looks like there might be something, I can't really tell. There might be a body on the ground out here.
Okay, bear with me while I'm entering this in, okay? Can you see out your window if the deputy's there?
Yeah, I can see the deputy there. I think he's going to check the body.
Okay, is there anybody else around?
No, my daughter's inside the house.
Okay, no, I mean outside where they
I don't know. Should I go outside?
No, sir, you just keep yourself safe, okay? I'm not advising you to do anything, you just keep yourself safe. I'm just wondering what you can see from your window.
I can see the deputy outside.
Is there only one?
Yeah.
All right, what's your first and last name, sir?
Wesley Rowe.
Spell your last name for me?
R-O-E.
Okay, and your phone number you're calling me from?
813-340-3049.
All right, sir, I went ahead and updated the call, and we do have more deputies on the way out there to check everything out, okay?
Okay.
All right, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
So after that second 911 call, it sounds like the deputies arrived pretty quickly then?
Yes.
All right. And did you speak to the deputies?
Shortly after that, more and more deputies started arriving, and a bunch of them came to my door and knocked on the door, and it said Sheriff's Department. I opened the door, they told me not to step out. They said, sir, please put your hands out first. I put my hands out first, and they said, come out slowly, keep your hands up. Came out, and I told them I'm basically the person that called 911, and they asked if they could come into the house and search the house. I said, that's fine. I just said my stepdaughter was there as well. So a bunch of them came in the house and kind of swarmed out. I went with one of the deputies to where my stepdaughter was. She was in our bedroom in the closet, so.
And you had asked her to go into that closet?
Yeah, I had asked her to go in that closet, yes.
Going back to earlier in the day, had you seen the defendant around the house?
I did, around 7 o'clock or so, I saw her outside the house.
Okay, and where did you see her? Were you at the front of the house, the side of the house?
The side of the house, outside that window that you showed me earlier.
Okay, the window, from your living room window?
Living room window, yes.
And where was she? What was she doing?
There's a window that's joining there. She was opening it from the outside, which I thought was kind of weird, and putting like books or notebooks in there. So the window was kind of propped open. And then once she put her books or notebooks in there, she just walked out to the front and left the window kind of open.
And this was around 7 p.m., you said?
Around 7, could have been a little bit after.
I'm going to show you some photos and ask you if any of these photos show the window that you said you saw her propping open. And this is State's Exhibit 1K. Does that show the window?
Yes, it does.
Okay, and since we know already that this is your house, I
Yeah.
take it that the window would be this window here?
That's correct.
Okay, and you saw her from this window?
No, that window, yes.
Okay, and that, what books was she, could you tell what books they were?
I don't know, they were just, looked like books and folders.
Okay. And after she left that window, you said she went towards the front of the house?
Yes.
Did you see whether she went back in the house or whether she stayed outside or what she did?
No.
Prior to hearing those gunshots, did you hear any arguments, any yelling, anything, any loud raised voices?
No.
Since you lived there with the Deans living next door to you, had you ever heard any loud yelling, any raised voices coming from their house, any arguments, any fighting?
No.
If I may have one moment?
Yes.
Judge, we'll pass the witness.
Cross-examination.
I might have just one moment, Judge.
Absolutely.
Good morning, Ms. Rowe, how are you?
Good, how you?
At the time of August of 2015, how long had the Dean's family and Nicole Nachtman lived next door to you?
I just think a few years at that point.
Just- Do you recall, I mean, a few?
2,
or
3.
2 or 3?
2 or 3.
Okay, 2 or 3 years. And I know we've seen a lot of pictures that you're describing of where you were in different times. So the room that you and your stepdaughter were in when you heard the pops, is that room towards the back of your house?
That's correct.
And is it one of the rooms at the furthest back of the house?
Yes.
And how far is it from that room, I know you're gonna probably have to guesstimate, how many feet is it from that room out to the outside driveway of your home? Just a guesstimate.
80, 100 feet, I don't know.
80 to 100 feet?
Could be a lot more, I don't know, you know what I mean?
And when you're there in that room, do you normally hear cars that are coming or going in any way?
You can almost kind of hear like people closing doors or opening car doors, but cars moving around now.
So if someone's close by and they slam their door, you're gonna hear that, but the normal movement of traffic, you really can't hear that from
No.
inside that room, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you indicated that you used to see Bob, Mr. Deans, outside working on the house and things of that sort, correct?
That's correct.
How often would you see Mr. Deans in any given week, those 2 or 3 years?
For a week, maybe 3 or 4 times a week. He
Okay.
would just be out there almost every few days.
What about Miriam Deans? How often would you see her in a given week?
Not very often I would see her.
The 2 or 3 years that the Deans family lived there, you became aware at some point in time that Nicole Nachtman had actually gone to Tallahassee to start school, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and that probably would have been in about 2013. Does that sound correct to you?
Could have been, I don't totally remember.
How often would you see Nicole Nachtman in any given week in, let's say, the first year that they moved into that house? How often would you see her?
I don't recall, at this point, seeing her very often.
What about the summer of 2015, that entire year? How often would you see her on any given week until the summer?
I would see her at times out running in our neighborhood, so I would see her there, or else I would see her walking to her car if I was driving in.
And did she in any way interact with you whatsoever?
No,
And did you attempt to interact with her in any way whatsoever? Would you interact with Miriam Deans when you saw Miriam?
yes,
And as a matter of fact, you described Nicole Nachtman really as a strange type of individual,
she
correct?
seemed strange or to herself.
And as it relates to August the 20th, I know we listened to the 911 call where you indicated that you heard 2 or 3 shots. When you were telling us about the shots today here in the courtroom, you indicated that you felt that there was a pause between one shot and then the remaining, one pop and the remaining pops. That pause, how long was the pause?
Could have been a second or two.
Okay. And you indicated again that you didn't hear any arguing prior to the shots, correct?
That's correct.
Right. Let me ask you this. Usually when you're in your home, do you hear conversations that are happening outside of your home by people that are maybe walking by?
No, I could hear somebody if they're back by that lake, but typically not. Or if somebody's like in our, cul-de-sac area, I could kind of hear them a little bit.
Can you make out conversations that are happening, or do you just hear noise?
I just hear noise or somebody speaking.
But you're not going to be able to articulate the conversations that are occurring?
No.
The room that you saw Nicole Nachtman approaching and opening the door, based on your knowledge of the house, the Dean's home, that's the window to Nicole Nachtman's room, is that correct? Or at least the room you would see her in?
I would see her in there. I always thought that was her room. I hadn't been in the house there to know that exactly.
It didn't appear to be a room where you would see Miriam Deans and Nicole Nachtman and Bob Deans getting together and hanging out.
The only
Is that
time
correct?
we've seen, only time I've seen Nicole in there.
And the Dean's home has a pool, is that correct?
That's correct.
How often in the 2 to 3 years that the Deans family lived there did you see Miriam Deans and Bob Deans and Nicole Nachtman in that pool area enjoying themselves, enjoying the pool?
I don't recall any time, but I wouldn't be like going back out there to look.
But, as you've indicated, you can hear noises and you can
Yeah.
hear sounds. I mean, you would have heard if somebody was out there hanging out and enjoying themselves and having a party, things like that.
Yeah, that's correct.
Would you have occasion over the 2 or 3 years that Miss Nachtman and the Dean's family lived in that home to ever have seen friends of Nicole's coming or going, or what you would have perceived would be friends because they were young, like she was?
No, but I think I remember seeing her stepbrother there at times.
Okay. Talking about friends, like,
Okay.
for instance, like your stepdaughter. She
No.
has friends that come and go, correct?
Yeah,
Okay. You never saw that in relations to the Dean's home, is that
No.
correct? And did you know any of the family of Miriam Deans or Bob Deans at all? Did you
Just-
know them?
just, I knew Miriam had a son.
That you would see come and visit
Yes,
every so often?
yes,
Maybe a around the holiday season?
Holidays, yeah.
And just so that I understand, the window that you're looking out, where you see the shadow,
Mhm.
is that your living room area?
That's correct.
Okay, and is your living room also towards the back of the house,
I would say mid of the house.
the mid-house?
Yeah.
And the shadow that you saw running, at what point can you see that shadow coming? Because I think Mr. Terry had you say that you saw the shadow coming from the driveway too. At what point did you really see that shadow approaching?
Just when it passed the window.
So where that shadow was coming from, you really can't tell us here today, is that correct?
It seemed to be coming from the front.
Somewhere from the front of the house, but
Yeah.
not necessarily the Dean's driveway or yours?
Yeah.
During the time periods that you would see Nicole Nachtman around the Dean's home, did you ever see her interacting with Bob Deans at all outside? Helping to paint the house, helping to plan a plan,
No.
helping her do anything?
No.
And if I understood you correctly, Elizabeth, which testified yesterday,
Mhm.
she's your stepdaughter, and how long have you been her stepfather?
Since she was like 2.5, 3.
And would it be fair to say that you were talking to her that night because you were interested in the fact that she had been to orientation,
That's correct.
and you were interested in what she had seen and heard and learned
Yeah.
about?
Yeah.
You seem to have a close relationship with your stepdaughter, is
Yes.
that correct? And you don't refer to her as your stepdaughter,
I
you refer
don't.
to her as your daughter, correct?
Yeah. Formally here, I would refer to her as stepdaughter, but anywhere else, I would refer to her as my daughter.
And there was also, did you ever know of any occasion where your daughter interacted with Nicole Nachtman at all?
Yes.
And what was that occasion?
When they first moved in, Nicole went trick-or-treating with us.
And during that trick-or-treating, do you recall that Nicole Nachtman was asking for vegetables instead of candy, or were you even involved in that closely?
I wasn't involved that closely.
You did, however, think it was kind of strange that at her age that she was going trick-or-treating with someone that was so significantly much younger than she was, is
Yeah.
that correct?
My daughter was in middle school, and I think at the time she was in high school, a junior, or maybe even a senior.
And the position of the body, which obviously I hate to refer to the body, so it's Mrs. Dean's. The evidence is gonna show that. When you're looking out there and seeing what you are observing, to you, the manner in which that Mrs. Dean's is facing is as if she was running towards the road, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you indicated that you saw Nicole Nachtman at about 7 o'clock, and this is on August the 20th.
That's correct.
And when you came home, you also observed that both Bob's car and Nicole's car were there at the Dean's residence, is that correct?
That's correct.
I might have just one moment there.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir, appreciate it
Okay,
very much.
thank you.
Oh, you know what, Judge, I'm sorry.
Please proceed.
One more question. Let me ask you to look at what I'm going to have identified for the record as Defense Exhibit 1A, and ask you if you can, just to yourself right now, recognize what that depicts. Is it a fair and accurate depiction of what the home of the Dean's family would look like
That's correct.
during the daytime hours?
Yeah.
No objection.
Judge, I'd like to move at this time Defense Exhibit 1A into evidence.
Be admitted.
And, Mr. Rowley, I'm gonna just ask you one question, and that is in the sense of in that particular picture, would this be the window that you were saying that you saw Nicole Nachtman at?
Yes,
That she
sir.
opened
Yeah.
and propped open, left propped open, where
Yes.
she had put in some books
Yep.
and some folders? Thank you very much, Judge. I'm done.
All right. Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
May this witness be excused by the state
He may be.
and by the defense?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you, sir. You may step down. You may be excused as a witness at this time.
Thank you.
I'll ask the state to call your next witness.
Detective Michael P. Slack.
Detective P. Slack. Detective P. Slack, good morning and welcome. If you'll raise your right hand to be sworn, thank you. Do you swear affirm any testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do, sir.
Thank you, Detective. If you'll follow the bailiff around to the ramp that leads up to the witness chair, please watch your step. When you get to the chair, go ahead and have a seat, make yourself comfortable. That microphone is adjustable. You may proceed.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Please state your full name and spell your last name for the record.
Detective Michael P. Slack. It's P-E-C-Y-L-A-K.
Thank you. And are you employed?
I am
Where do you work?
the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office.
How long have you been employed with the sheriff's office?
A little over 6 years.
And in what position were you working in August of 2015 with the sheriff's office?
I was working as a patrol deputy assigned to District 3, which is the west side of Hillsborough County.
And if you could generally tell us what a patrol deputy's duties are.
We respond to anything from 911 calls to suspicious incidents. Basically, anytime you call 911, have a report of anything, that's usually going out as a patrol deputy.
And in August of 2015, what shift or hours were you working?
I was working 7 p.m. to 7 a.m.
I want to turn your attention specifically to August 20th of 2015. Do you recall responding to a call on Fensbury Drive that evening?
I do.
Do you recall approximately what time that call came in?
I was dispatched at 9:28 p.m.
How far away were you from the scene when you received the call from dispatch?
I would have been fairly close, but not too close. It took me about 7 minutes to get on scene.
And about what time did you respond, if you recall?
I responded at 9:28 and I arrived on scene at 9:35 p.m.
Were you the first law enforcement officer to respond to that scene?
I was.
And what was the actual address that you responded to?
It was 14108 was the numerical.
Fensbury.
Fensbury Drive, correct.
What did you see when you first arrived on scene?
When I first pulled in, the Fensbury Drive, the south end of it is a cul-de-sac. So I parked outside the cul-de-sac, and immediately upon looking in the cul-de-sac, I saw a white female, excuse me, white female body laying in the driveway of 14108 Fensbury Drive.
Did you see anything else around the female?
No, there was nothing, no one moving. It was kind of eerie.
As you approached the back cul-de-sac that you've described and approached and got to the position to park your vehicle, do you recall seeing anybody running from that scene?
I did not see anything moving, no one running.
Okay. No one walking down the road or any close by streets, anything like that?
No ma'am, no one around.
Do you recall seeing any cars driving fast away from that area?
I did not see any vehicles.
And did you see anyone standing outside their home?
No ma'am.
At approximately 9:35 at night when you were called, when you responded, tell us what the lighting was like in that area.
The cul-de-sac has a pretty decent lighting for the area. There was a couple street lights around there, so it was pretty well illuminated.
Okay, and the female body that you've described, I believe you indicated you could see blood.
Yes ma'am.
Okay, what position was the body in?
The body was towards the end of the driveway. The upper body of the area was closer to the roadway itself, while the feet were pointed up towards the garage of the residence, closer up on the driveway itself.
So after you park your vehicle, do you go straight to this female?
I do.
Did you see any movement at all from the female?
No ma'am.
Did you make attempts to determine if she was still alive or if you could do any life-saving measures?
I did. I put a glove on my right hand and I went to feel for a pulse on her neck, but was not able to feel for a pulse.
Did you call for EMS?
I did.
Okay, and medical services?
Yes ma'am.
Once you felt that there was no pulse coming from her neck, did you yourself perform any life-saving measures?
I did not.
Okay. What observations did you make at that point once you're standing close to the body?
So at that point, as I was standing close to the body, I observed a casing, a bullet casing, just next to her head, down towards the roadway itself.
Did you move it?
I did not.
Did you move the body at all in any way?
I did not move the body, no.
Were you present when EMS did respond to attempt any efforts on the body, the female body?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And did you give them any instructions regarding attempting any life-saving efforts?
I advised EMS that I could not feel for a pulse, and to go ahead and see if they could feel for one. So they went ahead and hooked her up with what they call leads. It's the sticky things that they put on you to feel for heart rate detection. And I just advised them that to not move the body.
Okay. The shell casing that you advised that you observed, did you put any kind of a marker near it to indicate that that could have been a potential piece of evidence?
I did.
And what was that marking?
In my car, I have little rubber orange triangles. So I placed an orange triangle next to the casing.
Okay. What's the next thing you did?
After that, I was instructed to begin a neighborhood survey.
Okay. At that point, prior to you beginning the neighborhood survey, are other units, other law enforcement arriving on scene?
Yes, ma'am. There are multiple other units arriving on scene.
Including supervisors?
Yes, ma'am.
So tell us, what is a neighborhood survey?
A neighborhood survey is something we'll conduct on both in-progress crimes and delayed crimes. For example, if I go to your house for a burglary, I'll go ahead and talk to the neighbors. It depends on the housing situations of the residences, but I will talk to 2 to 3 houses down from the crime scene on each side across the street. I'm looking for stuff like a witness that saw a suspicious vehicle, cameras, instances, stuff like that. So I went ahead and began going around to the whole cul-de-sac.
What house did you go to first? And let me first say, you've already indicated to us that this address that you respond to is 14108 Fensbury. So tell us from that, what house do you go to first?
So from that house, we decided, myself and another supervisor decided to check on the occupants of the residence at that location. So we went and knocked on the door where I came in contact with, I believe, Mr. Rowe is his name, and asked if we could search his house.
And did Mr. Rowe allow you to search the home?
He did.
And tell us about this search. Is this a thorough search? Are you moving items, collecting items? Tell us what kind of search this is.
No, ma'am, this is a quick search to find if we have an active shooter somewhere.
Okay. When you went inside the residence, did you observe anything of potential evidentiary value or anything to raise your suspicion?
I did not, ma'am.
Did you speak to Mr. Rowe at that point?
It would have been briefly, hey, can we come in here and search, you know, did you see anything else? Very briefly.
Okay. What did you do next?
From there, I began the actual neighborhood survey, and I worked in a counterclockwise direction. So the next house I went to was 14106 Fensbury Drive.
Okay. And did you speak to residents at that address?
I did.
And anything, did you search that home?
I did not.
Okay. Anything about your conversation with those residents that led you to conduct any further search in that home?
No, there was nothing to believe that anything was going on within that house.
Okay. And at that point, where do you go next?
The next one would have been 14104 Fensbury Drive.
And did you speak to residents at that address?
There was no one home when I knocked on the door.
Okay. And next?
Next was 14102 Fensbury Drive.
Okay. And same thing at that home, were you able to speak to residents?
Yes, I spoke to someone very briefly.
Okay. And anything about that conversation lead you to raise your suspicion in any way?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so what did you do next?
From there, 14102 is the last house on the cul-de-sac. I jumped across the street, which is 14110 Fensbury Drive, which would have been to the right if you're looking at 14108 where the body was. If you're looking at the right, it's the house directly to the right.
Detective Peacock, I'm going to show you some photographs that have already been entered into evidence. Showing you State's Exhibit 1C, if you could look at the monitor. Do you recognize this?
I do.
And the home that we see primarily in this photograph where the body is this the residence that you first went to, 14108?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
And is this what you recall seeing regarding the body when you arrived on scene?
It is, ma'am.
Okay. And in this photograph, we can see several orange markers surrounding the body. Where would be the marker or near these markers that you placed the marker you described getting from your car?
So the marker I described was be the one on the roadway, and you can see it, it's kind of blurry in here, but just below The orange circular is, there's an orange triangle, and that would have been my marker.
Okay, and you're referring to, I believe it's like a very small orange dot that's right just south of that bigger orange marker, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And is that where you said that you recall observing the shell casing?
Correct, and I put that down just so no one else would step on it, just a quick marker.
As other units arrived on scene?
Yes, ma'am.
So tell us what happens when you respond to 14110.
I walk up to the house, nothing appears out of the ordinary. I went to go knock on the door, and when I knocked on the door swang open, which led me to believe that the door was never secured.
Okay, so when you say the door swung open, was the door actually latched closed?
No, ma'am.
Was it sort of slightly ajar?
Correct.
When you say you knock, are you just knocking traditionally on the front of the door?
Yeah, I wasn't banging or anything, I was just knocking in enough that it began to swing open.
Okay, what happened at that point?
At that point, I alerted the other deputies and supervisors on scene that I had an open door, and they all came over. There was about 5 of us, I believe.
Okay, are you all sort of right outside the door at this point?
We are.
Are you, at that point, do you begin giving commands or making loud statements to anyone potentially inside that home?
I do. These are, for any open door we go to, if it's an alarm call or not, we're gonna give our presence. So if someone's inside, we want them to come out. If I'm going to any kind of alarms or open doors of anything, I'll say, sheriff's office, come out now, sheriff's office, I'll give them 3 to 5 loud commands.
And is that what you were doing?
Yes, ma'am.
Were the other 5 or so members that you said you were with, was everyone also giving commands?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you hear any response from these commands?
No, ma'am.
So what happens at that point?
At that point, we decide to go into the residence, fearing for anyone else that's either injured or any kind of active shooters within the residence.
Okay, was a supervisor on scene with you to make the decision to go inside?
Yes, ma'am, there were several supervisors.
So what happens when you go inside?
When we go inside, like I said, there are approximately 5 deputies, so what we'll do for clearing a house is we'll hold certain areas and continue through with other areas. You never want to be caught in any kind of specific area that's going to result in me being injured with such as a fatal tunnel, which is a entering of a hallway. So me and a supervisor went up to into the house, and to the right is a bedroom. We went and cleared the bedroom while the other units kind of held the house. Once we come out of the bedroom, then we'll go ahead and go on with the next house. It's essentially leapfrogging for the most part.
Okay, and during this process, are you looking for evidence?
No. We're looking for someone that's injured or an active shooter.
Okay, are you collecting any items as you're going?
I am not.
Okay. So when you go inside this home, tell us what you observe when you go inside the home of the home itself.
The home appeared semi-neat. Once we cleared the first bedroom and began towards the kitchen, I observed the TV to be on. I can't recall if it was either playing something or paused, but the TV was on, and there was a bag of potato chips out on the couch.
Were lights on inside the home?
There were lights on, yes.
In multiple rooms, areas of the home?
Yes, the house was well lit.
Okay. During the time that you're sort of doing this sweep through the house that you've described, are you all continuing to give verbal commands and announce your presence?
We are.
At any point, do you see anyone inside the residence?
I do not.
Do you hear anyone inside the
I
residence?
do not.
Do you recall as you're going through the residence seeing any weapons?
I do not.
Do you recall seeing any blood anywhere?
No.
So as you're doing this sweep through the house, I guess tell us if you do discover anything alarming or concerning.
So as the deputies were moving through the house, another deputy or supervisor encountered a locked bedroom door towards the kind of the rear of the house.
What happened at that point?
So at that point, we decided whether we had it would have to be locked on the inside. So at that point, we're thinking we might have a barricaded subject. At that point, one of the other supervisors on team used to be on the SWAT team for several years, so he began to take command of the situation. Because if it was a barricaded subject and it was involved in a shooting, it would be something that SWAT would end up actually responding out to.
May I approach, Judge?
Yes. No need to ask.
Thank you, Judge. Detective, if you could take a look at what's been pre-marked as States Exhibit 6A through G for identification purposes and let us know if you recognize those.
I do.
And are these photos a fair and accurate depiction of your observations of the interior of the residence on that day, August 20th of 2015?
They are.
Your Honor, at this time I'd ask to move into evidence States Exhibit 6A through G.
No objection.
They'll be admitted.
And ask for permission to publish.
You may publish them.
Tell us, Detective, what do we see here in States Exhibit 6A?
So this is the front of the house. The front door would be in the middle of the residence.
Okay. And this is, and for clarification, this is the home at 14110 Fensbury, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so right here in the middle, is this the front door that you have already described to us that when you encountered it, it was slightly ajar?
Yes, ma'am.
States Exhibit 6B. This is also that same front door?
That is the front door, yes, ma'am.
States Exhibit 6C. What is this photograph of?
That's the front entryway.
Okay. As you walk in, and this is the front door that we see here on the left side?
Correct.
The items that we see here in this photograph, it appears to be like a pet food dish and a shoe. Is that how you recall it being when you went into the home?
I can't recall if those items were there.
Okay. 6D.
Yes, this is as you continue in the front of the house, I believe would be a little living room.
Okay. 6E. Another photograph of that same living room.
Yes, ma'am.
6F. The other side of that same living room.
Correct, ma'am.
Okay. And States Exhibit 6G, what do you recall this being?
So that's the front door that we came into, and when I said that, me and those two guys were clearing and holding something, we went to the right and began clearing. I believe it was a bedroom. The very left side door is gonna be a bedroom, and I don't recall what the second door was, but that's what we were clearing.
Okay, so, and for the record, I believe you've described this, the furthest left door indicated in State 6G, this is the bedroom that you went towards to clear, is that what you were indicating?
Correct, that's what I went into first.
The bedroom where you encountered a locked door, is that depicted in these photographs?
It is not.
Okay. Is that on sort of another area of the home?
It's towards the back of the home.
Okay. So tell us what happens when you all encounter this locked door, what do you do?
So once we encounter the locked door, the supervisor began making a decision whether it needs to be breached. At that time, I was instructed to go outside of the house and begin securing the rear of the residence in case anyone would try to get out of that bedroom door or the kitchen area.
Did you take any part in entering that room at any point?
No, ma'am.
Once you exited the residence and began to sort of protect the rear of the home, did you ever re-enter the home?
I did not.
What do you do then for the remainder of the time while you're outside of this residence?
When I was instructed to go outside, the residence has a fence and shrubs that surround it. The shrubs are very tall. So myself and another deputy brought a patrol car up over the grass, basically right up next to the fence, where we got on the hood of the car and were able to see over the fence and into the area where the kitchen sliders are, and you could see the rear of the residence and kind of inside of the residence.
Okay. And did you then remain outside of the home for the rest of your time on scene?
I was there for about an hour before the decision was made to breach the door, and after that, I began a crime scene log.
Okay, tell us what a crime scene log is.
A crime scene log is a log of everyone that comes into the crime scene, the time that they came in and the time that they left.
Okay, and at this point, when you say a crime scene log, is it safe to assume that the crime scene is now taped off from any civilians entering or exiting that scene?
It is, ma'am.
Okay. Is it only law enforcement then entering and exiting that scene?
Yes, law enforcement, medical examiners, detectives.
And are you documenting exactly who goes in and out of that taped off crime scene?
Yes, ma'am.
How long were you maintaining that crime scene for?
I was there from 9:35 from when I got there till the next morning at, I believe, like 7:30 a.m. I was there all night.
Okay. This area that you've described for us that you responded to, is that located in Hillsborough County?
It is.
May I have just a moment, Judge?
Yes.
I'll pass the witness, Judge.
Cross-examination.
where you saw one shell casing, and that was towards the street area in front of the head of Ms. Deans, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Approximately how far away from the actual head of Ms. Deans was that shell casing?
3 feet maybe?
And you also indicated that you went to different locations, so today, do you recall who it was you spoke to at 14106 Fensbury?
I don't believe I got a name, it was just a quick interview.
But you did talk to someone and ask them if they had seen or heard anything, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And at 14106, you said that there was no answer to your knock, if I understood you correctly?
14106 had an answer, 14104 did not have an answer.
And 14102 did have an answer, and you also spoke to those individuals, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And again, you would have asked them, did you see anything or did you hear anything, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you recall the name of the residents there?
I do not.
When you indicated that as you, well, excuse me for just a moment, Judge.
Certainly.
In having you authenticate the photographs that were introduced with no objection from the defense, 6A through G, you indicated that these were fair and accurate representations of what you saw as you approached the house as well as you went through the house, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and what that would mean then is that these photographs are intended to show exactly how the house was when you went in, correct?
Correct.
You would have no reason to believe that any of the things, the items that are on the floor, or the items that are on the couch, or the way that the house looks, was changed in any way from the time you went into the home and these photographs were taken.
Correct.
And the room that you actually went into, and in order to clear it, did you have an impression of whether that was a master bedroom, if that was a child's room, a young person's room? Did you have any impression?
I did not. I just remember it being a bedroom.
Do you recall as you sit here today, could you describe anything about the room, such as whether or not the color of the comforter or anything of that sort?
No, ma'am.
Nothing that appeared to you to reflect that there was a king-size bed versus a queen-size bed versus a double bed, anything like that? None of that sounds familiar?
No, ma'am.
And so all you did was go in and clear it, again, looking to see whether or not there was anyone there?
Yes, ma'am. Active shooters and injured parties.
And I believe that the photograph that you were shown indicated, or seemed to indicate, that there were 3 markers around Mrs. Deans, is that correct?
Correct.
Did you place the other 2 markers around Mrs. Deans, the 2 orange markers?
No, that was Sergeant Carr.
Did that happen in your presence?
I can't recall.
Do you recall whether or not you observed the other 2 markers and what they were marking at some point in time during that night that you were there from 9:35 until the next day?
At one point I found out they were more shell casings.
Okay, there were 2 additional shell cases, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And having, again, looked at the photograph that depicts the 3 orange markers, are you in a position to tell us how far the other 2 shell casings were from Mrs. Deans?
Within feet. I can't testify to the exact measurements of them, but they weren't far, far away.
And you're indicating that as you went through the house initially, the very first initial, what you're calling a breach into the home, because you're looking for perhaps an active shooter or anyone that might need help. How long were you actually in the house initially, the very, very first time?
I want to say anywhere between 5 and 10 minutes is a brief time.
And who was with you as you made entry into the home?
It was Sergeant Carr, Sergeant Collado, Deputy Robbins, Deputy Rizzo, and Deputy Gibson.
And at the time that you were entering the home, who was it that you would have identified as being the supervising individual?
The 2 supervisors would have been Sergeant Collado and Sergeant Carr. Usually in instances like this, Sergeant Carr would take over just due to the fact that, like I said, he was on SWAT for a numerous amount of years.
And you also indicated that you were outside when the emergency emergency medical services individuals arrived, correct?
Correct.
And you indicated that they placed leads on Mrs. Dean's. You recall where on Mrs. Dean they placed those leads?
I can remember the one that was on an elbow, and that was all that I can remember.
And is that from an independent memory or from a photograph that you may have seen?
Photograph.
Something that you might have seen
Yeah.
within the last few days?
Yes, ma'am.
Couple weeks, something like that? Okay. You indicated that you told EMS personnel not to move the body. Did they have to manipulate the body in any way whatsoever in order to attach the leads to what would have been appropriate spots to see if they could in some way provide the medical services?
I can't testify to whether where they're supposed to be. I know they're usually on the chest, but like I advised, I said to try not to move the body, because at that time I believe she was deceased and they also believe she was dead.
All right, so having told them, please don't move the body, that means please don't roll the body over, for instance.
Correct.
However, there was a manipulation of the body to some extent to attach the leads, correct?
Yes, if they touch the body by placing the leads on it.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Redirect?
No redirect, Judge.
May this witness be excused by the state
Yes, sir.
and by the defense?
Yes.
Thank you, Detective. You may step